For 40 years, a businessman lived surrounded by luxury, yet trapped in the darkness of blindness and solitude. His life changes completely when he is helped by a girl who sells flowers on the street. That unexpected encounter awakens forgotten memories and reveals a connection to the past that forever changes both their destinies. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The mansion stood imposing on Park Avenue, in the heart of the Upper East Side, a wealthy neighborhood in New York City. Its high walls and cast-iron gates seemed to protect not only the property, but also the secrets and solitude of its inhabitant. Within those walls, clad in Italian marble and decorated with works of art that no one admired, lived Arthur Blackwood, a 62-year-old man whose fortune was as vast as the emptiness he felt inside. Arthur woke every day at 6 in the morning, even without seeing the sunlight rise over the city. His routine was meticulously calculated. He knew every step within the house, every piece of furniture, every tread of the mahogany staircase that connected the residence's 3 floors. 40 years of blindness had transformed his other senses into precise tools of navigation. The smell of coffee prepared by Martha, his housekeeper, announced it was 7 o'clock. The distant sound of traffic on the avenue indicated that the day was beginning outside, while inside the mansion, time seemed suspended in an eternal twilight. Martha had worked for Arthur for over 20 years. She was a 58-year-old woman, her graying hair always tied in an impeccable bun, her hands calloused from years of service. She knew her employer's moods, knew when he needed silence and when a simple good morning would be ignored. Over the years, she had learned to respect the distance Arthur imposed between himself and the rest of the world. He wasn't rude, but he wasn't warm either. He treated all his employees with cold politeness, paid generously, but never showed affection or genuine interest in their lives. That Thursday morning, like all the others, Martha served breakfast in the dining room. Freshly baked bread, butter, apricot jam, fresh fruit, and the strong coffee that Arthur appreciated. He ate in silence, as always, while listening to the financial news on the radio. His business empire continued to grow even without his constant physical presence. Arthur Blackwood owned one of the largest real estate development firms in New York, responsible for dozens of commercial and residential buildings scattered across the city. His subordinates respected and feared him in equal measure, but no one truly knew him. After breakfast, Arthur went to his office, on the 2nd floor. There he would spend the next few hours in video conference meetings, analyzing reports his secretary read aloud, signing documents guided by the hands of his lawyers. He was a brilliant businessman, with a prodigious memory and an analytical ability that impressed everyone. But when the meetings ended and the employees left, Arthur was once again alone with his thoughts and the silence that filled every room of that house. Around 4 in the afternoon, he decided to do something unusual. Normally, he remained in his office until 6, but that day he felt the urge to walk a little in the gardens. Perhaps it was the unbearable February heat or simply an inexplicable impulse. He descended the stairs with his cane in his right hand, mentally counting the steps as he always did. 22 steps to the entrance hall. But that day, distracted by thoughts of a complex deal he was closing the following week, Arthur lost count. On the 19th step, his left foot sought a footing where there was no longer a step. The loss of balance was instantaneous. Arthur felt his body lurch forward, his arms flailing uselessly for something to grab. On 2. The cane slipped from his hand and clattered down the stairs with a dull thud. He fell to his knees on the marble floor of the hall, his hands breaking the impact, a sharp pain shooting through his wrists. For a few seconds he remained there, stunned and embarrassed, even knowing he was probably alone. Martha must have been in the kitchen at the back of the house. The other employees had the day off. Arthur took a deep breath, preparing to get up on his own, when he heard a voice he didn't recognize. It was a child's voice, high-pitched and sweet as honey, filled with genuine concern. "You fell, mister. Wait, I'll help you." Before he could respond, Arthur felt small, delicate hands gripping his arm. They were a child's hands, warm and surprisingly firm. He was paralyzed, confused. Who was this child? How had she gotten into the house? "Easy, mister. I'll help you up." Are you hurt?" The girl pulled his arm with a strength disproportionate to her size, and Arthur, still astonished, allowed himself to be helped. He managed to stand leaning against the wall. His heart was pounding, not from the fall, but from the unexpected presence. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" "I sell flowers on the corner, mister. I saw the gate was open and came in to get my ball that had rolled inside. Then I saw you fall and came to help. Did you hurt your knee? Is it bleeding?" Arthur ran his hand over his right knee and felt the torn fabric of his pants and something damp that must have been blood. The pain was throbbing, but it was nothing serious. What truly disturbed him was the whole situation. He didn't receive unexpected visitors. He had no contact with children. He didn't know how to react. "It's nothing serious. You need to leave now. This is a private residence." "But you're hurt. My grandma always says that when someone falls, we have to help." "Do you live all alone in this huge house?" "That's none of your business. Where are your parents?" "I live with just my grandma. She's at home, not feeling well today. That's why I'm selling flowers by myself." "Do you want to buy a flower? They're really pretty. They smell so good." The child's simplicity and spontaneity completely disarmed Arthur. He wasn't used to this kind of interaction. The people around him always maintained a formal, respectful, distant posture. This little girl spoke to him as if they were old acquaintances. "How old are you?" "5. I'm turning 6 in 3 months. My name is Isabella, but everyone calls me Bella. What's yours?" Arthur hesitated. When was the last time someone had asked his name in such a direct and innocent way? "Arthur. Arthur. That's a nice name. You can't see, can you? Is that why you have this cane?" The question, asked without any malice, only with genuine curiosity, caught Arthur off guard. Normally, people avoided mentioning his blindness, acting as if it weren't noteworthy. But Bella had simply asked, as she would about any other characteristic. "No, I can't see. I went blind when I was about your age." "Wow, that's so sad. But can you do everything by yourself? Like eat, get dressed, work?" "Yes, I can." "That's cool. My grandma says that strong people don't give up, even when things get hard. You must be very strong, Mr. Arthur." Mr. Arthur, no one had ever called him that, and for some reason he couldn't explain that informal address didn't bother him. Martha appeared in the hall at that moment, breathless and frightened to see her employer with torn pants and an unknown girl by his side. "Mr. Blackwood, what happened? Who is this child?" "I fell on the stairs, Martha. The girl helped me. She came into the garden looking for a ball." Martha approached, assessing the situation with a suspicious eye. She saw many children begging near the mansion, and she always turned them away politely but firmly. "Little girl, you need to leave now. The master needs care and you can't stay here." Bella looked at Arthur, as if waiting for him to confirm or contradict the housekeeper's order. And then, to the surprise of both of them and himself, Arthur said something completely unexpected. "Martha, prepare some juice for the girl. She helped me when I fell. It's the least I can do." The silence that followed was heavy with astonishment. Martha had known her employer for 2 decades and had never seen him display this kind of spontaneous kindness, especially with a stranger. But she was too professional to question him. "As you wish, sir, I'll prepare it immediately." As Martha headed to the kitchen, Arthur felt Bella's small hand take his. "Can I take you to the sofa, Mr. Arthur, so you can sit and rest your knee?" "You may." And there, guided by a 5-year-old girl, Arthur Blackwood crossed the hall of his own mansion. He sat on the Italian leather sofa in the living room, the same sofa where he had spent countless nights alone, listening to the silence and lost in bitter memories. But at that moment, for the first time in decades, he was not alone. Bella sat beside him, swinging her little legs that didn't reach the floor. "Your house is so big, Mr. Arthur. How many rooms does it have?" 12. 12 rooms. Wow. And you use all of them?" "No, most of them are kept closed." "What a waste. You could open them for visitors, have parties. My grandma always says a house without people is a house without a soul." Arthur smiled for the first time that day. For the first time in a long time, in fact. There was something refreshing about the child's sincerity, in her ability to say exactly what she thought without filters or ulterior motives. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She is. She knows a lot of things. She talks about God, about love, about kindness. She says the most important thing in life isn't having things, but having people you love." "Do you have people you love, Mr. Arthur?" The question hit Arthur like a punch to the gut. He fell silent, searching for an answer that didn't sound pathetic. He had no family. His parents had passed away many years ago. He was an only child, had never married, never had children. He had employees, partners, lawyers, doctors, but people he loved. He couldn't say yes. "I don't have many people in my life." "That's sad, but now you have me. I can be your friend if you want." "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." "You don't need to know someone well to be friends, mister. You just have to wish them well. And I already like you. You have a kind voice even when you're being serious." Martha returned with a tray holding 2 glasses of orange juice and a plate of cookies. She served Bella first, then Arthur. The girl thanked her enthusiastically and began to drink the juice, making sounds of satisfaction that drew a smile even from Martha. "This juice is so yummy. Thank you, ma'am. What's your name?" "Martha. I'm the housekeeper." "Nice to meet you, Miss Martha. Have you been taking care of Mr. Arthur for a long time?" "For over 20 years. "Wow, then you're almost family." Martha exchanged a look with Arthur, but he couldn't see her expression. If he could have, he would have noticed the emotion held back in those tired eyes. Because Bella had said something Martha had always felt, but never dared to verbalize. She truly considered Arthur family, even knowing that to him, she was just an efficient employee. After they finished their juice, Bella began to enthusiastically describe the mansion. She talked about the velvet curtains, the crystal chandeliers, the paintings on the walls that she found beautiful but strange. She described the colors, the textures, the architectural details, with the wide-eyed wonder of someone seeing such luxury for the first time. And Arthur listened, letting the girl's words paint images in his mind that had long since faded. "There's a painting here of a woman in a blue dress. She's looking far away, like she's sad. Who is she?" "I don't know. My mother decorated this house. I've never seen these paintings." The sentence came out with an involuntary bitterness. Bella noticed. "You went blind when you were little, right? Do you remember what colors were like?" "I remember some things. I remember the blue of the sky, the green of the trees. I remember my mother's face. But they're old memories, kind of blurry. But you can still see with your heart, Mr. Arthur. My grandma always says that. She says some people see everything and see nothing, and some people see nothing and see everything. Do you see with your heart?" Arthur fell silent. The question was too simple to be answered easily. Did he see with his heart? No. He had closed his heart long ago, locked his emotions in a box at the bottom of his soul, concentrating only on building his financial empire. To see with the heart meant allowing himself to feel, to connect, to love. And Arthur had decided years ago that love was a vulnerability he couldn't afford. "I don't know, Bella. I don't think so." "Then I'll teach you. It's easy. You just have to pay attention to the good things. Like right now we're here drinking juice, talking, and that's good. Do you feel that it's good?" "Yes, I do." "There you go. That's seeing with your heart." The simplicity of the explanation touched Arthur in a way he hadn't expected. Maybe Bella was right. Maybe he had spent so much time focused on his losses, his disappointments, the literal and metaphorical darkness of his life, that he had forgotten to pay attention to the small, good moments, like this one. A Thursday afternoon, sitting on his sofa, sharing juice and cookies with a 5-year-old girl who had appeared out of nowhere, and for some reason decided he was worthy of friendship. Time passed quickly. When the living room clock struck 6, Bella jumped from the sofa, startled. "Wow, it's late. My grandma's going to be worried. I have to go, Mr. Arthur." "Wait, you said you sell flowers. How much are they?" $3 each. But you don't have to buy one, mister. You already gave me juice and cookies." "I want to buy some." "Martha, get $200 from my wallet. Sir, they're $3 flowers. You don't need to—" Martha began, but Arthur interrupted her with a wave of his hand. "Get $200. Martha obeyed, though clearly uncomfortable with the situation. When she returned with the money, Bella stared at the amount in disbelief. But this could buy almost 70 flowers. I don't have that many. It doesn't matter. Use this money to help your grandmother, and come back tomorrow if you want. You can bring more flowers. Can I really come back? Every day? You can. You said we're friends. Friends visit each other. Bella's eyes shone with joy. She hugged Arthur with such force she nearly knocked him off the sofa. It was a tight, desperate hug, full of gratitude and pure affection. Arthur was rigid for a second, not knowing how to respond. When was the last time someone had hugged him? Slowly, hesitantly, he raised his arms and returned the hug, allowing himself to feel the warmth of that small body against his, allowing himself for the first time in 40 years to accept the affection of another human being without reservations or barriers. Thank you, Mr. Arthur. You're the nicest person I've ever met. I'll be back tomorrow, I promise. I'll be waiting. And then Bella ran off, her hurried little steps echoing through the marble hall, the door closing behind her with a dull thud. Silence returned to the mansion. But it was a different kind of silence. It was no longer the heavy, suffocating silence of loneliness. It was a silence of expectation, of something yet to come. Arthur remained seated on the sofa for a long time. Martha tidied the room around him, collecting the glasses and the cookie plate, but said nothing. She too had sensed that something important had just happened, though she didn't know exactly what. "Martha," Arthur said, finally breaking the silence. "How many years have you worked here?" 23 years, sir. And in all that time, have I ever once asked about your life? About your family? About your dreams?" Martha stopped what she was doing. The question had caught her completely off guard. "No, sir, but it's not your obligation to be interested in that." "It should be. You've been taking care of me for over 2 decades. You know my habits, my preferences. You serve me with dedication every day. And I know almost nothing about you. That's wrong. Sir, tell me, now, do you have children?" "I had a son, but he passed away 15 years ago." Martha's voice trembled as she said those words. Arthur felt their weight, the contained pain, the loss she carried in silence. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "No one knew, sir. I never spoke about it. I thought it wasn't appropriate to bring my personal sorrows to work." Arthur took a deep breath. For how many years had Martha carried that grief alone, serving him with a professional smile, hiding her pain behind a mask of efficiency, and he, wrapped up in his own darkness, had never noticed, never asked, never cared. "From now on, I want you to know that you can talk to me, not just about work, but about anything. You're not just my employee, Martha. You are important to me." Martha was silent, but Arthur heard a muffled sob. She was crying, and he didn't know what to do, didn't know how to comfort her. But then he remembered Bella's hug, the way she had simply embraced him without asking permission, offering comfort through touch. Arthur stood up from the sofa, feeling his way until he found Martha. And then, for the second time that day, he allowed himself to hug someone. "Thank you, sir, thank you." They stood like that for a few minutes, 2 lonely human beings finding solace in each other. When they finally separated, something had changed between them. A wall had come down. That night, lying in his king-size bed in the 3rd-floor bedroom, Arthur couldn't sleep. His mind kept returning to Bella, to her simple yet profound questions, to her sincere hug, to the way she had unceremoniously entered his life and, in a few hours, shaken everything he thought about himself and the world. He remembered her question. "Do you see with your heart?" No, he didn't, but maybe he could learn. Maybe it wasn't too late for him. After all, Bella had said they were friends now, and friends visit each other. She would be back tomorrow. And Arthur, for the first time in decades, was looking forward to the dawn, eager to hear those hurried little steps in the hall, that sweet, life-filled voice that had brought light into his darkness. While New York slept outside, with its millions of inhabitants lost in their own worlds inside the mansion in Park Avenue, a man who had lived for 40 years in solitude embraced the first spark of hope he had felt since he was a boy. And all because of a little flower girl who had stumbled into his life by chance, Or perhaps by something greater than chance. Perhaps by fate. Perhaps by divine mercy. Perhaps simply because sometimes life gives us exactly what we need at the moment we need it most, even when we don't know we need it. And Arthur Blackwood, reclusive businessman, ruthless tycoon, a prisoner of his own darkness, fell asleep that night with a smile on his lips. The following days brought a completely new routine to the mansion on Park Avenue. For the first time in decades, Arthur Blackwood woke with anticipation, with something other than meetings and financial reports occupying his thoughts. Every afternoon, punctually at 4 o'clock, the doorbell would ring, and Martha would open the gate to welcome Bella, who always arrived with her wide smile and contagious energy. The girl brought with her not just flowers, but stories. Stories about the neighborhood where she lived, a simple area in the Bronx, a world away from the Upper East Side. She talked about Mrs. Gable, the lady who sold pastries on the corner, and always gave her one for free when there were leftovers. About Old Man Joe, the popcorn vendor who told funny stories while he worked. About the other children on her street, her playmates who didn't have much but shared everything. Arthur listened to every word as if he were discovering a whole new world. And he was. He had spent so much time surrounded by people who only spoke of business, contracts, investments, that he had forgotten what a simple, unpretentious conversation about ordinary life was like. Bella showed him that there was beauty and joy in the little things, in everyday interactions, in the acts of kindness that happened every day among ordinary people. During one of these visits, while they were having passion fruit juice prepared by Martha, Bella asked if she could explore the house. Arthur hesitated for a moment, but soon agreed. The mansion was too big for just one person, and the girl's childish curiosity was so genuine that he didn't have the heart to say no. "Come with me, Mr. Arthur, I'll describe everything I see." And so, for the first time in years, Arthur took a complete tour of his own home, guided by a 5-year-old girl. She led him by the hand, carefully climbing the stairs, describing every detail her eyes captured. She spoke of the Chinese porcelain vases that decorated the hallways, the huge windows overlooking the garden, the closed-off rooms that smelled of must and neglect. "This room here is beautiful, mister. It has a big canopy bed and everything. Why don't you use it?" "It was my mother's room. After she passed, I never went in here again." Bella was silent for a moment, processing the information with the seriousness only children can muster in the face of another's pain. "Do you miss her?" "Every day." "My mom is gone too. I was really little. I don't even remember her well. But my grandma says she's always with me in my heart. Your mom is in your heart too, Mr. Arthur." The conversation could have veered into melancholy territory, but Bella had a gift for turning heavy moments into something lighter. She continued exploring, opening closets, discovering old boxes, until in the third-floor room that served as a storage area, she found something that made her shout with joy. "Mr. Arthur, there's a box full of toys here. Are they yours?" Arthur stood in the doorway of the room, memories flooding back. That box. He knew exactly which one it was. It held the toys from his childhood, from before the accident that stole his sight. Toy cars, building blocks, a faded teddy bear, and photographs. Many photographs. "Yes, they are. From when I was a child." "Can I look?" "You may." Bella opened the box with reverence, as if opening a treasure chest. And for Arthur, that's exactly what it was, a treasure. To have long-buried memories. She began to describe each item, her voice painting vivid images in his mind. "There's a red toy car here, a really old one. And a teddy bear that's a bit worn out but must have been loved a lot. And look, photos. There's a little boy here who must be you, mister. You were so cute. You're smiling, playing with a kite. And here's another one with you, and a very pretty woman. Is that your mum?" "It is." "You look so happy in these pictures." "I was. Back then I was." Bella noticed the sadness in his voice and, with the inexplicable wisdom some children possess, changed the subject. "You know what I think? I think you should keep these photos in a nice place, not in a box in the storage room. They're important. They're your memories of the good times." "Perhaps you're right. I am. My grandma always says we can't let today's sadness erase yesterday's joy. Both things are part of life." Arthur sat on the floor of the storage room, something he hadn't done in years, and Bella sat beside him, still holding the photographs. She continued to describe each one. And slowly, Arthur began to tell the stories behind the images. The time he flew a kite in the park and it soared so high it seemed to touch the clouds. The 7th birthday when he got a red bicycle and fell 3 times before learning to balance. The Christmas his mother's turkey burned, and they laughed so hard they cried and ended up eating sandwiches. They were happy memories, and talking about them was both painful and liberating. Arthur had spent so much time focused on the trauma of his blindness, on the loss it represented, that he had forgotten he also had good memories to cherish, and Bella, with her simple presence and innocent questions, was helping him reclaim them. "Mr. Arthur, can I ask you a question?" "You may." "How did you go blind?" The question hung in the air. It was something Arthur never talked about. He didn't even like revisiting that moment with his doctors. But there, sitting on the dusty floor of a storage room, next to a little girl who accepted him exactly as he was, he felt he could speak. "I was 5 years old, your age. I was playing in the backyard of our house trying to climb a tall tree. My mother had warned me not to climb it, that it was dangerous, but I was stubborn. I fell from a great height and hit my head. I was unconscious for a long time. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, and I couldn't see anything anymore. The doctors said the impact had damaged my optic nerves. They said it was irreversible." "That's so sad. Were you scared?" "Very scared, and very angry. Angry at myself for not obeying my mother. Angry at the world for being unfair. For years, all I felt was anger. And now, are you still angry?" "Sometimes, but more than anger, I feel empty, as if a part of me got stuck on that day, in that fall." Bella was thoughtful for a moment. Then, with that childlike determination that accepts no impossibilities, she declared, "You know what I think? I think you can get your sight back. Miracles happen, Mr. Arthur. My grandma always says so. She says that when you least expect it, good things arrive." "There are no miracles for me, Bella. I've seen the best doctors in the world. They all said the same thing. But that was a long time ago, right? Medicine gets better. There might be a new treatment you don't know about. Have you looked recently?" Arthur had to admit he hadn't. After decades of being told his blindness was permanent, he had simply stopped looking. He had accepted it as his unchangeable fate. But the hope in Bella's voice was so genuine, so contagious, that for the first time in a long time, he felt a spark of something like hope. "Maybe I should look again." "You should. Promise you will." "I promise." And Arthur would keep that promise, not because he genuinely believed anything could change, but because he didn't want to disappoint this little girl who inexplicably believed in him more than he believed in himself. The days turned into weeks. Bella became a constant presence in the mansion, and gradually the house began to change. Martha, inspired by the girl's joy, started leaving the windows open, allowing fresh air and sunlight to flood the once gloomy rooms. The flowers Bella brought were arranged in vases throughout the house, filling the space with color and fragrance. The oppressive silence was replaced by laughter, conversation, and sometimes the off-key singing Bella insisted on doing, while helping Martha in the kitchen. Arthur changed too. His employees noticed he was more patient in meetings, less harsh in his remarks. He smiled more, something that took everyone by surprise. His personal physician, Dr. Henry Stanton, a 50-year-old man who had been caring for Arthur for over a decade, was summoned for a house call one Friday afternoon. "Dr. Stanton, I want you to tell me the truth. Are there any new treatments for blindness caused by optic nerve trauma? Any recent medical breakthroughs?" Dr. Stanton adjusted his glasses, surprised by the question. Arthur had never shown interest in discussing treatments before. "Well, Mr. Blackwood, the truth is, yes. Science has advanced a great deal in recent years. There are experimental therapies using stem cells, artificial retina implants, and even surgeries for neural regeneration. Of course, nothing is guaranteed, and results vary greatly from case to case. But there's a chance, a real chance." "There is. I would say that, depending on the extent of the damage, the chances of partial recovery are around 30 to 40%. It's a complex, expensive, and risky procedure, but it's possible. Arthur fell silent, processing the information. 30 to 40%. It was no guarantee, but it was more than zero. It was a possibility, and possibilities were something he hadn't had in 4 decades. I want to do the tests. I want to know if I'm a candidate for these treatments. Dr. Stanton smiled. It was the first time he had seen his patient show a willingness to fight his condition. I'll arrange everything. We'll run a full battery of tests next week. And Mr. Blackwood, if you'll permit my curiosity, what made you change your mind for all these years? You've always refused any discussion of experimental treatments. Arthur thought of Bella, of her eyes full of hope, of her unshakable conviction that miracles happen. Let's just say someone reminded me that it's worth a try. That afternoon, when Bella arrived for her daily visit, Arthur could barely contain his excitement. Bella, I spoke with my doctor. I'm going to have tests to see if I can undergo a new treatment. A treatment that might help me see again. The shriek of joy Bella let out echoed throughout the mansion. She jumped into Arthur's arms, hugging him with all the strength her thin little arms could muster. I knew it would work. You're going to see again, Mr. Arthur. You'll see the flowers, the sky, the people. You'll see me. Her excitement was so pure, so sincere, that Arthur felt his eyes sting. He hadn't cried since he was a child, but at that moment a single tear rolled down his face. Bella noticed and gently wiped it away with her small hand. Don't be sad, mister. Those are good tears, right? Tears of hope. They are, little one. They're tears of hope. But it wasn't. All flowers and hope. On a rainy Tuesday, something happened that would test the limits of the change Arthur was undergoing. He had an important meeting scheduled for 3 in the afternoon with his company's top lawyers and representatives from an international investment fund. It was a multi-million-dollar deal, a venture that could expand his company into new markets. The meeting was to take place in the mansion's conference room, a formal space on the first floor equipped with a meeting table, a projector, and all the necessary infrastructure. Martha had prepared coffee and snacks, and everything was impeccable. The lawyers arrived punctually, accompanied by the investors, all in suits and ties carrying leather briefcases and serious expressions. Arthur led the meeting with his usual competence. They discussed numbers, projections, risks, and benefits. The documents were spread across the table awaiting signatures. It was at this critical moment, as they were about to close the deal, that Bella arrived. The girl didn't know about the meeting. She had arrived at her usual time, 4 o'clock, but a little early. Martha tried to explain that it wasn't a good time, but Bella, excited about some news she wanted to share, insisted on seeing Arthur. And in the confusion, she ended up walking into the conference room unannounced. Mr. Arthur, guess what? My grandma is feeling better today. She even got out of bed. The silence that followed was awkward. Everyone present looked from the scruffy little girl, with her simple patched dress and worn-out sandals, to Arthur, waiting for his reaction. One of the lawyers, Mr. Morgan, a 40-year-old man known for his rigidity, frowned. Mr. Blackwood, who is this child? What is she doing here? She's my friend, Bella. She visits me every day. With all due respect, sir, we are in the middle of an extremely important business meeting. Perhaps it would be best to ask her to leave. Before Arthur could respond, Bella, not fully understanding the tension in the air, approached the table with curiosity. She saw all the papers spread out and thought maybe she could help organize them. But in her movement, she bumped into an investor's glass of water, which tipped over onto the contracts, soaking several pages. The chaos was instantaneous. The lawyers jumped up in alarm, trying to save the documents. The investor cursed in English. Mr. Morgan looked at Bella, with an expression of barely contained fury. This is unacceptable. This child has ruined crucial documents. Mr. Blackwood, with all due respect, you need to have more control over who enters your home, especially during business meetings. Bella, finally realizing she had done something wrong, began to cry. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to help dry the papers with her small hands, only making the situation worse. I'm sorry, Mr. Arthur. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to... Mr. Morgan cut her off, his voice sharp. You've done enough damage, girl. Get out and don't ever come back. This is no place for a street kid. The words were like a slap. Bella stopped crying for a second, the impact of their cruelty momentarily silencing her. Martha, who had entered the room upon hearing the commotion, rushed to comfort the girl. The investors exchanged uncomfortable glances, and Arthur, sitting at the head of the table, felt an anger rising within him that he hadn't felt in years. "Mr. Morgan," he said, his voice low but filled with authority. "You're fired." The lawyer blinked, incredulous. "Mr. Blackwood, you can't be serious. I've worked for your company for 15 years. And for those 15 years I tolerated your arrogance because you were competent. But I've just discovered that you are also cruel. And cruelty, especially towards a child, is something I will not tolerate. Gather your things and leave my house." "But sir, the deal, the contracts." "Contracts can be redrafted. Dignity once lost cannot be recovered. Leave, now." Mr. Morgan, red with anger and humiliation, gathered his belongings and stormed out, slamming the door. The other lawyers and the investors remained silent, clearly uncomfortable. Arthur turned towards where he estimated they were. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. If you wish to postpone the meeting, I will understand completely, but let me make something clear. That little girl is welcome in my home at any time. She has more value and character in her 5 years of life than many adults I've known in my entire existence. If that is a problem for you, we can end our partnership now." The investors looked at each other. The oldest of them, a grey-haired man named Robert, was the first to speak, his English accented. "Mr. Blackwood, there is no problem at all. In fact, I admire your loyalty. Business is important, but personal values are fundamental. We can reschedule for next week. Thank you for your understanding." After everyone had left, Arthur asked Martha to bring Bella back. The girl entered with her head down, still sniffling, her eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry, Mr. Arthur, I ruined everything. That man was right, I shouldn't have come." Arthur knelt before her, placing his hands on her small shoulders. "Bella, listen to me. You did nothing wrong. It was an accident. Accidents happen, and that man was wrong. Completely wrong. You are always welcome here. This is your home as much as it is mine. Do you understand? But what about your papers and the important deal? Papers can be redone. Deals can be rescheduled. But friendship, affection, loyalty, those things are irreplaceable, and you've given me all of that. So never ever apologize for being here." Bella hugged Arthur again, and he hugged her back, feeling her tremble in his arms. And in that moment, Arthur Blackwood, ruthless businessman, a man who had built an empire based on cold, calculated decisions, made a choice that would change everything. He chose heart over profit. He chose kindness over pragmatism. He chose Bella over any deal in the world, and for the first time in 40 years, he felt he had made the absolute right choice. The weeks following the incident with Mr. Morgan brought a new dynamic to Arthur's life. The news that he had fired one of his top lawyers for defending a street child spread quickly through his business circles. Some criticized him, saying he was getting sentimental, losing his focus. Others, however, showed renewed respect for him, admiring his courage to place human values above financial interests. Arthur didn't care about others' opinions. For the first time in decades, he was making decisions based on what he felt was right, not on what was most profitable or strategic. And that was liberating in a way he had never imagined possible. Martha was also undergoing a transformation. The conversation she'd had with Arthur on that first day had opened emotional floodgates that had been closed for a long time. She began to share more about her life, her memories, her pain over the loss of her son. And Arthur listened, truly listened, not just with his ears but with his heart. He discovered that Martha's son had dreamed of being a teacher, that he loved literature, that he had passed away suddenly at 23, leaving a void that was never filled. He discovered that Martha had dedicated her life to caring for him, Arthur, as a way to fill that void, transferring the maternal love she no longer had anyone to give to. "You were always more than an employee to me, Martha," Arthur said in one of these conversations. "Even when I didn't show it, even when I was cold and distant, you were always here taking care of me, and I'm grateful for that, more than you can imagine." Martha, with tears in her eyes, responded in a choked voice, "And you, sir, were always the family I had left, even without knowing it. Taking care of you gave my days purpose. You have no idea how many times I thought about giving up on everything, but I would wake up and remember that you needed me. That kept me alive." The confession touched Arthur deeply. How many silent lives of dedication existed around him that he had never noticed? How many people carried secret pains and loves while fulfilling their daily roles? Bella had opened his eyes, even if he couldn't yet literally see, to the humanity of the people around him. The tests requested by Dr. Stanton were conducted at a private clinic in Midtown Manhattan. Arthur underwent MRI scans, CT scans, neural sensitivity tests, and a series of procedures that lasted 3 full days. Bella insisted on accompanying him to all of them, even when Arthur said it wasn't necessary. She would sit in the waiting room with Martha, swinging her little legs and chatting animatedly with other patients, spreading her contagious joy wherever she went. When the results were ready, Dr. Stanton requested a private meeting with Arthur. His voice, usually calm and professional, carried a tone of restrained excitement. "Mr. Blackwood, I have some surprising news. The tests show that, contrary to what doctors diagnosed 40 years ago, the damage to your optic nerves is not complete. There are preserved neural connections, merely dormant. With current technology, especially a treatment combining precision surgery with neural stimulation therapy, there is a real chance of partial vision recovery." Arthur gripped the arms of his chair. A real chance. The words echoed in his mind. What are the exact chances? "I would say a 50% chance of recovering enough partial vision to distinguish shapes, colors, faces. A 20% chance of near-complete recovery. The other 30% represents the possibility of no improvement at all, or even worsening. It is a risky, expensive procedure with no guarantees. And if I do nothing? Then you will remain as you are. Your blindness is stable, it will not get worse, but it will also never get better." Arthur was silent for long minutes. 50%. A 50-50 chance of seeing again, at least partially, but also a 50-50 chance of remaining in darkness, or worse. It was a gamble. And Arthur had always been a man averse to gambles when something important was at stake. But then he thought of Bella, of her voice saying that miracles happen when you least expect them, of her eyes he had never seen but imagined filled with light and hope. He thought of the possibility of seeing her face, of finally putting a real image to the voice he loved so much. He thought of seeing the sun again, the colors, the world that had been torn from him at the age of 5. "I want to have the surgery." Dr. Stanton smiled. "Whenever you're ready to begin, we will be." That afternoon, Arthur gathered Bella and Martha in the living room to tell them his decision. Bella, upon hearing the news, exploded with joy, jumping and shouting as only children can. Martha cried with emotion, clasping Arthur's hands in hers. It was a moment of pure hope, untainted by doubts or fears. But the joy was interrupted when Bella, in the midst of her excitement, suddenly grew serious, her little face contracting with worry. "Mr. Arthur, I need to tell you something important. It's about my grandma." "Go on, little one." "She's very sick. Her heart isn't working right. The lady at the clinic said she needs surgery, an expensive surgery, at a private hospital. But we don't have the money for it. I'm selling more flowers, trying to save up. But the lady said it has to be soon, that we can't wait long." Bella's voice trembled as she spoke the last words, and tears began to stream down her face. All the fear she had been carrying alone, trying to be strong so as not to worry her grandmother, finally overflowed. Arthur pulled the girl onto his lap, hugging her tightly. "Bella, listen to me. Your grandmother is going to have that surgery. I will take care of everything. The hospital, the doctors, all the costs. You don't need to worry about money." "But it's so expensive, mister. The lady said it costs over $100,000. It doesn't matter how much it costs. Your grandmother will have the best possible treatment. It's the least I can do for you after everything you've done for me." Bella hugged Arthur with such force that he felt his ribs protest. But he didn't complain. He just held this child who had changed his life, feeling her gratitude flow through the embrace. "Can I take you to meet my grandma? She's always wanted to meet you. I tell her all about you every day." Of course you can. Let's go right now. And so, for the first time in decades, Arthur Blackwood left his mansion on the Upper East Side to visit a simple neighborhood in the Bronx. Martha accompanied them, along with Gerald, the driver who had worked for Arthur for years, but with whom he had never exchanged more than a few words. The journey took almost an hour in the New York traffic. Bella sat in the back seat between Arthur and Martha, narrating every part of the way. She described the neighborhoods they passed through, the tall buildings giving way to simple houses, the streets that became narrower and more potholed. There was no shame in her voice, only love for her neighborhood, her community, her home. When they arrived at Acacia Street, a narrow lane with houses packed closely together, Arthur smelled the characteristic scent of a working-class neighborhood. Home-cooked food, clothes drying on a line, damp earth. They were smells he hadn't experienced in a long time, smells that brought back a simplicity long lost in his life of isolated luxury. Bella's house was small, with only 3 rooms. The paint was peeling, the gate was rusty, but there were flowers planted in old paint cans, adding a touch of color and life to the place. Bella opened the door with excitement. "Grandma! Grandma! I brought Mr. Arthur to meet you." From inside the house came a woman's voice, weak but filled with emotion. "Isabella, my girl, you really brought him? Come in, come in." Arthur was guided by Bella into the tiny living room, where there was an old sofa and a small television. But what dominated the space was the makeshift hospital bed where Bella's grandmother lay. She was a woman Arthur estimated to be between 65 and 70, thin with white hair tied in a loose ponytail. Her skin was brown, marked by time and work, but her eyes still shone with life. "Mr. Arthur, it's an honor to have you in our humble home. Isabella talks of nothing else but you. She said you are the kindest man she has ever met." "The honor is all mine, Mrs. Teresa. You can call me Teresa." Arthur sat in the chair Bella brought, while Martha stood behind him, taking everything in. There was something familiar about Mrs. Teresa's voice, something Arthur couldn't place. "Mrs. Teresa, I came here because Bella told me about your situation. I want you to know that I will cover the entire cost of the necessary treatment, the surgery, the hospital, the medication, everything." Mrs. Teresa was silent for a moment, and Arthur heard a muffled sob. She was crying. "Mr. Arthur, I don't know how to thank you. I don't know what I've done to deserve such kindness. You raised a wonderful girl who completely changed my life. It's the least I can do." It was then that Mrs. Teresa said something that made Arthur's heart stop for a second. "You don't remember me, do you? But I remember you. I was a nurse at St. Luke's Medical Center 40 years ago. I took care of you when you were a child, after the accident." The silence that followed was absolute. Arthur felt the world spin around him. The voice. That's why her voice was familiar. Buried memories began to resurface. A gentle voice saying everything would be all right, careful hands changing bandages, a comforting presence during the darkest days of his life. "You're Nurse Teresa, the one who used to sing to me when I had nightmares." "That's me. I never forgot you, little Arthur. I always wondered what had happened to that frightened child who was under my care for 3 months. Tears began to roll down Arthur's face. 40 years. 40 years separating that terrified boy from the kind nurse who had been a light in his darkest moment. And now, through an impossible coincidence, or perhaps something greater than coincidence, they had been reunited. Mrs. Teresa rose from the bed with difficulty, leaning on Bella, and walked over to where an old shoebox was kept. From inside, she took out a time-yellowed envelope. "I've kept this all these years. It was your patient chart that was going to be discarded when you were discharged. I took it because I thought it might be important one day." She opened the envelope and began to read aloud, with Bella helping with the more difficult parts. "Patient Arthur Blackwood, age 5. Severe cranial trauma resulting in bilateral vision loss. Initial diagnosis indicated permanent damage to the optic nerves. However, as per medical team observations in the following weeks, neurological tests suggested partial preservation of connections, recommendation for future re-evaluation with new methods." Note from head nurse. "This boy has a special light. I believe he can recover if he receives the right treatment." Arthur couldn't speak. The words from the chart echoed in his mind. Partial preservation of connections, future re-evaluation. But no one had ever mentioned this to him or his parents. Or maybe they had, and lost in their grief and shock, they hadn't paid attention. Or perhaps the medicine of the time simply didn't have the necessary resources. When I heard you were going to have the surgery through Isabella, I knew it was the hand of God at work. You have a real chance, little Arthur. You always did. And now medicine has evolved enough to help you. Mrs. Teresa, you kept this for 40 years? I did. Something told me it was important. And look, I was right. In that moment, Arthur understood that there were no coincidences. Bella hadn't appeared in his life by chance. He hadn't stumbled on that step by chance. This entire chain of events had been orchestrated by something greater, something that he, a pragmatic and skeptical businessman, couldn't name but felt deeply in his heart. Mrs. Teresa returned to her bed, tired from the effort, but with a smile on her face. Bella sat beside her, holding her wrinkled hand. "Grandma, Mr. Arthur is going to pay for your surgery. You're going to get better." "I know, my little one. I always knew God would take care of us." And he sent little Arthur back into our lives. Arthur spent the rest of the afternoon in that simple house, talking with Mrs. Teresa about the past, about the years that had gone by, about life's twists and turns. She told him she had retired after 30 years as a nurse, that she had lost her daughter 5 years ago and had taken on raising Bella alone, surviving on a small pension and help from the community. Martha, who had listened to everything in silence, finally spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "Mrs. Teresa, you saved Mr. Arthur twice, once when he was a child, by caring for him in the hospital, and again now through your granddaughter, by bringing him back to life." Martha's words rang true, because that's exactly what had happened. Arthur had spent 40 years surviving, but not living, and Bella, with her innocence and kindness, had brought him back to life. When they finally prepared to leave, night had fallen. Arthur promised he would return the next day with Dr. Stanton to examine Mrs. Teresa and schedule the heart surgery as soon as possible. He also promised that, regardless of the outcome of his own surgery, he would take care of Bella and her grandmother forever. On the way back inside the silent car cutting through the New York night, Bella slept nestled against Arthur's arm. Emotionally exhausted from the intense day, he stroked her hair, feeling the small, trusting weight of her body against his, and made a silent promise. "I will see again. I will make this surgery work, because I need to see her face. I need to see the eyes of this girl who saved me. I need to see Mrs. Teresa and thank her properly. I need to see Martha and acknowledge the woman who dedicated her life to me. I need to see the world again, not just for myself, but for all of them, for everyone who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." And that night, for the first time in 40 years, Arthur Blackwood slept with genuine hope in his heart, eagerly awaiting the day when the darkness would, finally, be overcome. The days leading up to the surgeries were marked by a frantic energy of preparations and, at the same time, a serenity that Arthur had never experienced. Dr. Stanton mobilized the best medical teams in New York. Mrs. Teresa's heart surgery was scheduled for a Monday at the Sterling Medical Center, and Arthur's for the following Thursday at the same hospital, so he could monitor her recovery before his own operation. Arthur insisted that Mrs. Teresa stay in one of the mansion's guest rooms during the preoperative period, so she would receive proper care and be close to all the necessary medical facilities. Mrs. Teresa resisted at first, saying she didn't want to be a bother, but Bella and Martha convinced her, and she finally accepted. The mansion on Park Avenue had never been so full of life. Mrs. Teresa occupied the guest room on the second floor, the very one that had belonged to Arthur's mother. Bella ran through the corridors with contagious joy, happy to have her grandmother safe and well cared for. Martha, who finally had another woman to talk to, spent hours in the kitchen with Mrs. Teresa, exchanging recipes and life stories. Arthur observed all of this, or rather felt it all happening around him, and his heart overflowed with an emotion he didn't even know he was capable of feeling. This house, which for so many years had been a silent mausoleum of his loneliness, had transformed into a home, a real home, full of voices, laughter, and affection. The night before Mrs. Teresa's surgery, they all gathered in the dining room for a special dinner prepared by Martha. There was pot roast, at Bella's request, who loved gravy, crispy potatoes, sautéed green beans, and that simple joy of people gathered around a table sharing not just food, but also hopes. Mrs. Teresa, sitting at the head of the table opposite Arthur, raised her glass of juice. "I want to make a toast to this family that God has brought together in such a special way, to little Arthur, who has become a man with a noble heart, to Martha, who has welcomed us with such warmth, and to my Isabella, whose light has illuminated all of our paths." Everyone raised their glasses, and Bella, not fully understanding the solemnity of the moment, but sensing its importance, shouted with enthusiasm, "To family." The words echoed through the room, and Arthur felt something break inside him. It wasn't pain. It was the last barrier that had kept his heart guarded completely crumbling. He had a family now. After 40 years alone, he had a family. Mrs. Teresa's surgery lasted 6 hours. Arthur, Bella, and Martha spent the entire time in the hospital waiting room, anxious and united in their worry. Bella prayed softly, her little hands clasped, her eyes closed. Martha knitted nervously, the needles clicking at a rapid pace, and Arthur just held Bella's hand, giving strength and receiving it at the same time. When the surgeon finally emerged, still in his scrubs, his smile already foretold the good news. "The surgery was a complete success. We were able to perform the bypass and repair the mitral valve. Mrs. Teresa is a strong woman. With rest and cardiac rehabilitation, she will have an excellent recovery." Bella burst into tears of joy, hugging Arthur and Martha simultaneously. The tension that had built up for months since she discovered her grandmother's illness was finally released in a cathartic cry of relief and happiness. Mrs. Teresa spent 3 days in the ICU and was then transferred to a private room. Her recovery was remarkable, impressing even the most experienced doctors. As she herself said, she still had a lot of living to do, a granddaughter to raise and a miraculous reunion to celebrate. And then Thursday arrived, the day of Arthur's surgery. He woke at 5. In the morning, his heart pounding, a mixture of fear and anticipation filling every fiber of his being. Martha prepared a light tea, as he couldn't eat anything before the surgery. Bella, who had insisted on sleeping in the room next to his the night before, appeared in her nightgown, her eyes still sleepy but determined. "Mr. Arthur, can I go to the hospital with you?" "Of course you can, little one. I need you there." At the hospital, after all the pre-operative procedures, Arthur was taken to the operating room. Bella accompanied him as far as she was allowed, holding tightly to his hand. "Mr. Arthur, when you wake up, you're going to see me. You'll see my face, and I want you to know that I'll be smiling, okay? The biggest smile in the world. I'll be waiting for that smile. You're going to make it. I know you will, because you're strong and because God has a plan for you." Arthur hugged Bella one last time before being taken into the operating room. And in that hug was all the gratitude, all the love, all the hope he carried in his heart. The surgery lasted 8 hours. It was a complex and delicate procedure, involving microsurgery on the optic nerves, the implantation of neural stimulation devices, and tissue regeneration. Dr. Stanton led the team masterfully, assisted by 2 international specialists who had flown in especially for this case. When Arthur finally woke from the anesthesia, he was in a dark room. His eyes were covered with special bandages that completely blocked any light. Dr. Stanton was by his side. "Mr. Blackwood, the surgery was technically successful. We were able to do everything we planned. Now we have to wait. The bandages will stay on for a week to allow the tissues to heal properly. After that, we will know if the procedure worked." 1 week, 7 days that felt like 7 years. But Arthur was not alone during this period. Bella visited him every day, always arriving with new stories to tell. She would sit by his bed and narrate everything she saw through the hospital window. The trees swaying in the wind, the birds that landed on the ledge, the clouds that formed funny shapes in the sky. Mrs. Teresa, already well on her road to recovery, also visited him, supported by a walker but stronger, each day. They talked about the past, the present and the future they were still building together. And Martha, faithful as always, remained by his side, ensuring he had everything he needed. Finally, the day came to remove the bandages. It was a sunny Saturday morning, with the characteristic warmth of March in New York. Dr. Stanton prepared everything carefully, explaining that the process would be gradual, allowing Arthur's eyes to slowly adjust to the light. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm going to start removing the bandages now. Keep your eyes closed until I ask you to open them. And remember, even if it works, your vision won't be perfect immediately. It will take weeks, maybe months, for your brain to relearn how to process visual information." "I understand." The doctor's firm hands began to unwind the bandages, layer by layer. Arthur felt the pressure lessen, the air touching his skin for the first time in days. His heart was beating so hard he was sure everyone in the room could hear it. "All right, the bandages are off. Now, slowly, try to open your eyes." Arthur took a deep breath. This was the moment. 40 years of darkness culminating in this single instant. He opened his eyes. At first, there were only blurs of light, bright and dark patches with no definite shape. But then, gradually, the patches began to organize. Colors. He was seeing colors. Blue, white, yellow. The colors that had existed only in his oldest memories were there, real, vibrant, alive. "I'm seeing colors," Arthur murmured, his voice trembling with emotion. "I'm seeing colors." Dr. Stanton smiled broadly. "That's excellent. Keep looking. Let your eyes adjust." The shapes began to define themselves, the window, the curtains, the bed. Dr. Stanton's face, still a bit blurry but recognizable. And then, beside him, a small figure. Brown hair in 2 little pigtails, a yellow dress, large bright eyes fixed on him. Bella. Tears began to roll down Arthur's face, not the salty, hot tears of sadness, but the sweet tears of a miracle realized. Because there, right in front of him, was the face he had imagined 1,000 times but never seen. And it was even more beautiful than any image his mind could create. Bella had a round, childish face, rosy cheeks, a small, upturned nose. Her eyes were brown and enormous, filled with a light that seemed to come from within. And her smile. That smile she had promised. It was the most radiant smile Arthur had ever seen in his entire life. "Bella, is that you?" "It's me, Mr. Arthur. Can you see me? Can you really see me?" "I can see you, little one, and you are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." Bella jumped onto the bed, hugging Arthur with all her might, and they both cried together, a cry of pure joy, of gratitude, of love. Martha, who was in a corner of the room, covered her mouth with her hands, her own tears falling freely, and Mrs. Teresa, leaning on her walker near the window, smiled with the wisdom of someone who had always known this day would come. Arthur looked at Martha, seeing for the first time the face of the woman who had cared for him for over 2 decades. He saw the graying hair, the wrinkles around her eyes, but mostly he saw the kindness, the dedication, the unconditional love stamped on every line of that face. He held out his hand to her, and Martha approached, taking his hand in hers. "Martha, you are exactly as I imagined. Beautiful, strong, incredible." Martha couldn't reply. She just squeezed his hand, smiling through her tears. "And Mrs. Teresa." Arthur looked at the woman who had cared for him as a child and whom fate had brought back into his life through her granddaughter. He saw the strength in her tired eyes, the determination in her posture despite her physical fragility. He saw the nurse who had sung to a frightened little boy 40 years ago. "Mrs. Teresa, thank you. Thank you for everything, yesterday, today, always. You don't need to thank me, little Arthur. It was God who orchestrated everything. I just obeyed." In the following weeks, Arthur's vision continued to improve. The doctors were impressed with the speed and quality of his recovery. He went from distinguishing only vague colors and shapes to recognizing faces, reading large text and noticing details. It wasn't perfect vision and probably never would be, but it was infinitely more than what he had before. Arthur saw the garden of his mansion for the first time, with the flowers Bella had planted everywhere. He saw the living room where they talked every afternoon. He saw the bedrooms, the hallways, every detail of the house he had known only through touch and memory. And everything was more beautiful than he had imagined, because now it was filled with life, with people he loved, with purpose. But more than seeing places, Arthur valued seeing people. Seeing the expressions on Bella's face when she told an exciting story, seeing the proud smile on Martha's face when she served a particularly special meal, seeing Mrs. Teresa regaining her strength day by day, becoming the vibrant woman that illness had temporarily diminished. 3 months after the surgeries, Arthur made a decision that had been maturing in his heart. Since the day he met Bella, he gathered everyone in the living room on a Sunday afternoon and made an announcement. Mrs. Teresa, Bella, you have transformed my life in a way that words cannot express. This house is as much yours as it is mine. I want you to live here permanently. I want you to officially be my family. Mrs. Teresa began to protest, but Arthur continued. And Bella, if your grandmother agrees, and if you want to, I would like to begin the adoption process. I want to be your father officially. The silence that followed was broken by Bella's shriek of joy. She jumped into Arthur's lap, covering his face with kisses, shouting yes over and over again. Mrs. Teresa was crying, but she nodded her head in blessing. And you, Martha, Arthur continued, you who have dedicated your life to caring for me, you are family too. You are no longer my employee. You are my sister in heart. Martha couldn't speak. She just hugged Arthur, and in that embrace was all the accumulated love of years of silent dedication, finally recognized and reciprocated. The following months were filled with practical and bureaucratic transformations. Arthur began the adoption process, which was surprisingly swift thanks to Mrs. Teresa's enthusiastic consent and the special circumstances of the case. Mrs. Teresa and Bella officially moved into the mansion, occupying rooms on the second floor. Martha was also given a larger suite, no longer servants' quarters, but a space worthy of a family member. But Arthur didn't stop there. The internal transformation he had experienced needed to be reflected externally, in actions that impacted lives beyond his own. He created the Isabella Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping children in situations of social vulnerability. The Foundation's first initiative was the construction of a community center in the neighborhood where Bella had lived, offering after-school tutoring, meals, cultural activities, and free medical support for the families in the area. The center's inauguration took place on a sunny July morning. Hundreds of people from the community attended, including Mrs. Gable, the pastry seller, Old Man Joe, the popcorn vendor, and all the children Bella considered her friends. A simple stage was set up in front of the new, colorful building, painted yellow and blue with a huge playground in the yard. Arthur took the stage, now able to see all the faces looking up at him with expectation and gratitude. Bella was by his side, dressed in a white lace dress, holding his hand with pride. Mrs. Teresa and Martha were in the front row, smiling. Arthur began to speak, his voice firm but filled with emotion. For 40 years I lived in darkness, not just the physical darkness of blindness, but the darkness of loneliness, of isolation, of a lack of purpose. I built a financial empire, accumulated wealth, but I was completely empty inside. And then a few months ago, a 5-year-old girl stumbled into my life. Literally. She helped me when I fell, and in helping me up, she taught me to see with my heart long before I recovered my physical sight. Arthur looked at Bella, who was smiling through tears of pride. Isabella taught me that the true value of life is not in the things we possess, but in the people we love. She taught me that it's never too late to start over, to believe in miracles, to open your heart. And most importantly, she taught me that love knows no limits of age, social class, or any other barrier that we complicated adults create. The audience applauded emotionally. Some people were crying openly. This center, Arthur continued, is just the beginning. It is my way of giving back what I have received. Every child who passes through these doors will have opportunities, care, love. Because if a single little girl was able to completely transform the life of a bitter old man, imagine what hundreds of children can do for this world when they receive the support and love they deserve. The applause was deafening. Bella hugged Arthur, and the photo of that moment, a 63-year-old businessman embracing his 5-year-old adopted daughter in front of the community center that bore her name, graced the front pages of New York's major newspapers the next day. But for Arthur, the most important moment was not the public inauguration, but what happened afterward, when everyone had gone home. He walked through the empty center, taking in every detail: the well-equipped classrooms, the colorful library, the industrial kitchen where meals would be prepared, the infirmary with modern equipment, and in the main hallway, a bronze plaque that read, "The Isabella Foundation, where love transforms lives." Bella ran after him, her little steps echoing down the hall. "Did you like it, Dad?" It was the first time she had called him Dad, not Mr. Arthur, but Dad, and that simple word hit Arthur with an emotional force that nearly knocked him over. He knelt before her, holding her little face in his hands, looking deep into the brown eyes he loved so much. "I love it, my daughter. And do you know why? Because every child who is helped here will receive a piece of the love you gave me. You didn't just change my life, Bella. You are going to change the lives of hundreds, thousands of children through what we will build together." And as father and daughter embraced in that empty hallway that would soon be full of life and hope, Arthur thought about how his life had come full circle, from the 5-year-old boy who lost his sight to the 63-year-old man who regained it, from absolute loneliness to a complete family, from existential emptiness to overflowing purpose. That night, in the mansion that was no longer a prison but a home, they all had dinner together. Bella chatted excitedly about the children she had met at the inauguration. Mrs. Teresa, completely recovered, helped Martha serve the food, and Arthur, sitting at the head of the table, looked at each of them with eyes that could finally see, with a heart that could finally feel, with a soul that was finally complete. Before going to sleep, Arthur went to Bella's room to say goodnight. She was already in bed, hugging the teddy bear he had given her, the same one that had been stored in the toy box in the attic. "Dad, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, my love." "Are you happy now?" Arthur smiled, stroking her hair. "I am the happiest person in the world. And do you know why? Because I've learned that happiness isn't about having everything, but about loving and being loved. And I have you all. I have you, your grandma, Martha. I have a family. I have a purpose. I have everything I ever needed but didn't know it. I'm really happy too, Dad. Grandma always said that everything happens in God's perfect time. And she was right. We found each other at the right time." She certainly was. Arthur kissed Bella's forehead and turned off the light, leaving only the dim nightlight illuminating the room. As he left, he paused at the door for a moment, looking at this child who had completely transformed his life. A 5-year-old girl who sold flowers on the street and who, through a simple act of kindness, had saved a man from the darkness. And Arthur Blackwood, the reclusive businessman who had lived for 40 years in solitude and blindness, finally understood the true meaning of sight. It wasn't about seeing colors, shapes, or faces. It was about seeing the love that was always there, seeing the opportunities for kindness on every corner, seeing the beauty in simple things, seeing the humanity in the people around him. In the years that followed, the Isabella Foundation expanded its operations, building centers in various neighborhoods in New York and then in other cities. Thousands of children benefited, receiving education, healthcare, food, and most importantly, love and hope. Bella grew up in a home full of affection, became a brilliant and compassionate young woman, always involved in the activities of the foundation that bore her name. Mrs. Teresa lived for many more years, the loving matriarch of that unlikely family. And Martha finally found peace for the pain she had carried for so long, filling the void left by her son with the love for this family that had adopted her as much as she had adopted them. And every morning, when Arthur woke up and saw the sunlight streaming through the window, when he saw Bella's smiling face at breakfast, when he saw the flowers she still insisted on planting throughout the garden, he would give a silent thank you for that day he had stumbled on the steps of his own home. Because it was there, in that seemingly insignificant fall, that his true life began. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Arthur and Isabella has deeply touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of love, transformation, and hope, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which moment marked you the most. Here you will find every day intense stories like this one which reveal the power of kindness, second chances, and the encounters that fate places in our path. Life is made of stumbles that turn into new beginnings and of small gestures that change everything. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode with a new story to warm your heart.